Well, I am not Sarah. I am not Sonia. And I am not Meredith, but this is Jeff Black. And today I am taking over a rather peaceful, probably fucking not, version of Unnamed and Untamed with my three favorite ladies. How are you all doing today? I hope well. We are going to go over for you all some Q&A questions that the ladies gathered in a more longer format than what social media can do for you. Now, we hope to be able to provide proper screen recordings to help educate the masses. So we're going to make these questions as spicy and saucy as they can be in terms of the answers we give. But first, let's get into the last. You guys do like how the last week's been, like pits, peaches, and pits. There we go. Boom, look at me. I've been on twice. I already know the shit. You guys should have me as a routine like person here. I mean, what can I say? Dominating all the others who've been here. What has been a peach in a pit for you, Meredith?
I'm all peaches. It's all peaches today. Yeah, I took some time last week and I allowed myself reading opportunities, which is awesome, like just for pleasure, not that education's not pleasure, but just reading. And that was awesome. This week, starting it off really nice with an action plan for every day. And yeah, it's good. Yeah, life is good. All action right now.
Well, good for you. I like that. No pits. So we will go right over to Sonia, who's just bobbing, nodding along, just looking happy and thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to see you all. So it's been a while now here in Tennessee. Yeah. So what's some peaches and pits for you? Anything good?
I it's no secret I'm a Seahawks fan, and we got like dominated by the Ravens, like 37-5, which was a big pit for me because we've done so well this far.
It just saving themselves. It was a deload week. It was a deload week for them.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really get deload weeks in the NFL. Like, so what? Now what? Put up or shut up. Like, it's just, Jeff, I know you're a football fan too. I know you're a big college football fan. I know you get it. It's like, it really just kind of fucks your whole week up. You're like, well, I'm looking for my momentum to start. Game day win. Hell yeah. Enjoy the afternoon. Get right with Jesus, get right with the NFL, kick off the week. And that's normally how I do my thing. And it really wasn't. And then we weren't trying to know the score. And we went out to breakfast and our waitress goes, "Oh my God, can you believe how terrible they did today?" And we were like, no, it's like not. So I sat in my shit a little bit yesterday, but I watched a little bit of the recap, and it was like even more brutal to when you know they're not going to win. Like, we didn't watch it live, and then you watch the recap. It's just the highlight shitty moments. They're not highlighting your big wins. So that was that was my pick for the week. My peach is like, I'm just really loving the transition. I know I've talked a little bit about obviously transitioning from in coaching and working for Nutrition Dynamic, and it's just such a different atmosphere to work in. It's like working for corporate in some ways, and in a good way. Like, there's a lot of meetings and Slack and communication. And then this morning, I got called and it was like, "Hey, you're taking on 12 new clients." And I was like, "Oh," I was literally just saying yesterday, like, I feel like I'm a little bit bored right now because I took time off before I made the transition to not take clients, and we were moving. So it was almost 5 months of not taking clients. And then literally, overnight, it was like, "Hey, you're taking on this entire caseload." So I was like, I'm fucking excited about it. I love having a little bit of a bigger roster, I don't like 100 clients, but obviously you take 5 or 6 months off of not bringing on clients. It's kind of like you're left with the core. I haven't been seeing a bunch of new, and I love the newness of new cases because they're so sick and you can normally get them feeling better. I mean, even just somebody 10% better if they've been sick for so long is such a win for them. I'm pumped about it. I'm a little bit nervous because I was like, this is going to be a lot at once, but I'm really excited. I'm feeling in my energy right now with it. So
can I share with you all a Jesus and football moment? So my ex-wife dragged me to church, and I don't mind going. It was one of those things. I was like, fine, but she didn't want to go to Catholic church. And I've been raised Catholic, so I had to go to a Baptist church. Well, the first one we showed up was a revival. Well, I've never been to one of those. So they're sitting there, and this dude's like grandstanding. Finally, 12:15 hit, and I was like, look, my Cowboys have already kicked off. I've got to get to the TV. And so I get up during this revival. And the guy like calls on me and goes, Whitney, because I'm wearing my Whitney jersey. And I was like, I turned, I looked, and I was like, nope, leaving, bye. And like walked out. Oh, she was so embarrassed. But anyway, I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. I was like, well, how does that end? And she goes, well, he either gets tired or someone eventually goes up there. And I was like, it had been like 90 minutes. I was dying inside. So that was my Jesus football moment. Yeah.
I hope that you have a better soon. I hope that you have another encounter in that environment.
I've been to other churches since then. Non-dom is my jam. So
that's us
yeah,
too.
Yeah.
Our pastor's just like honestly hilarious and so raw and real that you're like, I would kick it with this guy and have a good time. A lot of people don't know that about me. I think they assume that I'm just like this like tattooed vixen who just like hails Satan. Actually, a tattooed vixen who loves Jesus, and so that's just
you can't have that. That's sin. Leviticus says so. Tattoos bad, and that's where it's like, I gotta read between the lines. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that interesting moment because I'd never been to one. It was my first and last time there. So Sarah, Peaches, Pits. Where are we at?
Pits. So I've never been to a Baptist church or any sort of revival, but my Jesus and church story is found out this weekend. So I'm a Catholic, but definitely
I relate. Catholic high school, man.
Yeah, Cheester, like Christmas, Easter kind of Catholic these days. And just found out that we are instead got tickets for the Bucks game on Christmas Eve. So,
you got to go.
Yes, I know. I think Jesus will understand. But so excited about that. Good weekend. Watched the Olympia live stream. So that's always fun. Had it in the background when I was doing some work, onboarded a new client. So that's good. Pitt, we had to put our family kitty down. Or actually he passed away, which I'm kind of thankful for that he passed away at home last weekend. So that was sad. Taz was just the coolest freaking cat, like ever, like a dog basically, but a cat. And we had him since I was 11. So that was very sad, but he had a really good 18 and a half years. So yeah.
I have never been a cat person. I've shared this a little bit. And as you guys know, I'm obsessed with our cat. I can't imagine. I was thinking about that the other day, and I just kept thinking, like, our cat's like almost 14 years old. Like, how hard that's really going to be on me, because I've grown up with dogs my whole life. I'm a dog person, but there's a closeness I have with this cat and I don't know, is this like a thing? Like you're closer? I don't know what it is. I never got the bond with cats and people and their fucking cats. And now I'm that cat lady, like 100%. I just can't imagine. I have a fear of him passing. I'm not trying to dwell, but
no, Chubbs is going to be good.
Okay.
He's not going to die.
Chubbs has got some years in him.
Yeah.
18 years is a long time. That's a cat life well lived there. Let's see. For me, took the kids to see Metallica and Pantera on Friday, so that was kind of cool. It was super cool. The kids loved it. Keegan's favorite song was Walk. So it was weird watching them cry while they're playing. I was like, holy shit, who's this? I'm like filming it. And he's like, ugh. Anyway, and then Steven's put me in contact with some editors who want to work with me on my next book. So kind of fishing through that. I haven't really had any pits, in all honesty. I think I've gotten better as I've gotten older about accepting that life is just this fun roller coaster. So when I hit the rock bottom, which eventually it comes for us all again, I'll be better suited to hit the ground and kind of just jump back up and move again. So skid marks and all. So I'm just enjoying this quiet time. Y'all know how it is. It's quiet this time of year. And it makes you anxious. You know what I mean? You're like, whoa, what do I do with my time? It's not a bad thing. It's just people go on autopilot this kind of year. So it is what it is.
That's exactly. It is a little bit of when you're so used to being busy, it is a little bit of, we work in service. This is a service job. We serve people daily. And when you don't have as much of that going on, I feel like you really feel it. It's not like, oh, I'm relieved, I'm stressed. Feels a little off,
It's funny. I feel like I don't know astrology. So Jeff, if that's like your jam, the girls know, like, I love it. I'm just not good at it. I don't know it, but I feel
I'm
like
a Libra. It is what it is.
I am too.
That's why we get along, girl. Yeah.
And we're both Aries.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. The
Oh, yeah.
Rams. That I can
I-
see that
I
about you
feel like
too.
my stars and moons are a little shifted. I feel like the majority of this year has just been like a big like what the fuck, like I just need a t-shirt that says like what the fuck, and I just like Sonia always is like, it's like that meme where you're like, it's fine, it's fine, everything's fine, and it's like fire behind you. I feel like that's been kind of like, but now I'm kind of getting to, I don't know, a lot of good things coming, so it's like this peace and just a lot of shifting, but it's good.
Yeah, I'm
I
proud.
like it, you know, just it's nice when this time of year happens because you get a chance to kind of catch your breath before
Yeah.
January starts and everybody's pissed at themselves for already being 10 pounds way over where they wanted to be. So yeah,
Jeff,
it's nice.
I have a side note for you too. You have to take your kids, you need to look up, everyone needs to look up Little Miss Nasty, but it's a show. It's a like kind of like a burlesque show, but it's like a metal burlesque show.
Oh, I know what I know.
They're not like super naked, you know, but they're like kind of like they're dancers.
They're dancers, yeah.
Dancers, they're dancers. But like, you know, it's like they come out and it's like respect, and they're like doing water tricks and like all this cool stuff. And they're coming to Tennessee. I'm pretty sure they're on tour right now. So you will have to take your boys to go see them. Maybe like Nine Inch Nails, Pantera, Metallica. It's epic.
I will have to look into that.
Yeah, I'll send
right.
you done.
Well, with your alls ready to go,
Take it
fired,
off.
I'm sure by now. Let's get into the Q&As. First off, audience, we have to have a kind conversation for a moment. No one asked Meredith any questions. I expect to come back next time to host another Q&A and Meredith have an inbox full of shit. Just hammer her useless questions. I don't care. Ask her what she finds to be cool about taxes. I don't give a shit. Ask her anything. But I want to come back on here. So I'm going to make Meredith create a question for herself that we can ask her at some point. But we're going to kick this off with
Varieties, roundtable, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to kick this off with, I'm going to chuck it to you all, and I'll chime in if I want to. That way we can keep it moving and grooving. So, Sonia and whoever else, I'll go from there. When should women start monitoring hormones, especially to get a baseline? Oof.
Yeah, so that's a great question because we should just be monitoring hormones because there's, you know, there's the change of life, but then there's also, are we looking at fertility? Are we on birth control? Are we managing stress? Like, what are the goals at that time? I believe that specific one was more of a, for the person who asked it, more towards the change of life. And I just feel like really around like 30 to 35, you should really be more mindful of your hormones. I don't want to say like that's to say like it's not important before then, but you really have a good possibly, you know, 5 to 10 years if you start at 30 to really start preparing yourself for the change of life. So you're optimal, the least inflamed, estrogen's moving the right ways to really set yourself up for success. That's my 2 cents on that.
I have a quick injection to this where my mind immediately goes is knowing what we know about the toxic nature of our environment and us seeing dudes at 20 with testosterone levels at like 304, which is closer to 65 than it is closer to 18 on that scale. Don't you think that maybe it's something that, hey, if you got the spare change and you can afford it or get it, maybe start as soon as you can, like 16, 18, 20, and especially the testosterone. That's the one, and the progesterone even. You know, you're seeing a lot of girls who in their 20s just wrecked. And
I feel like before we go on hormone birth control that we should have a full panel done. I mean, like, I just feel like as a prerequisite, rather than like, hey, you're having these outrageous periods that are painful and this acne, here's a pill for it. I think we should at least look at, see what's going on. Are we dealing with estrogen dominance, androgen dominance? Are we dealing with, honestly, like cortisol, the cortisone, you know, we have skin issues that come from low cortisol converting into cortisone. So like there can be so many issues when it comes to that, but I just think it's so hard that birth control is the first thing we give young females when dealing with their first of many hormonal symptoms in their life. Yeah. And I guess I kind of forget about guys a lot because I don't work with a lot of young males. But yeah, I just feel like we should just be better about this as society. It's kind of mind blowing to me at times. But yeah.
Sarah, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think like as like young as you can, like ideally, like we'd all be getting full panels like at least once a year, maybe starting at whatever, 16, 18. Just because when you like, everyone I think gets maybe fixated on one result, like one panel and those results. But what we really want to see is, and what's really cool to see and empowering to see is comparing your hormone levels, your blood work over time. And I know I have a big ass spreadsheet, Meredith, Sonia probably does too, tracking their own data. And then looking at that data, those lab results, and correlating it to what was going on in your life at that time. Anybody listening, maybe you got this lab work done 6 months after a contest prep, and maybe some of the results, we would expect to see, and maybe we can compare it to another time in your life and you're also really stressed, and see that your body's pattern is to downregulate thyroid hormone, or whatever it is. Everyone kind of has different kind of ways that their body adapts. So I just think as regularly as you can, and out of pocket, like at least in the US, like most states, like there's ways to kind of do it and invest maybe $200 a year into that. I mean, I think that's definitely worth it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree.
Night out of drinks.
What?
Mayor. What?
Oh, I said it's a night out with drinks. I mean, like
yeah,
people spend $200 on drinking and going to a club, and it's like, how about those labs for 180? It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That is true. Priorities are shifted in the younger generation. But Meredith, what about you? You look like you're ready, feisty, fiery, ready to just zestfully jump in here.
I get very feisty when it comes to females health. So I'm agreeing with the girls, no shocker to anybody. I'm going to say now. So if you're listening to this podcast and you have not had lab work, I'm going to say now is a great time. In a perfect world, I would love it. Like, love it. If that was part of like, hey, your daughter hit 16, whatever, 21. This is part of a wellness checkup for, men and women when they become 21 or even earlier, because let's be real, most women or girls are getting put on birth control like at 12. Maybe that's part of, like Sonia said, that wellness check, because that's going to probably change or hopefully change the tune and trajectory for that female's life going forward. If you haven't had lab work at this point, I think that you should. I think it establishes and understand it's full lab work, not looking at, just the CBC or CMP, like really looking at that full robust hormone profile to see where you do trend. And I think that keeping up with that at once a year at the very minimum, I think is absolutely something that is doable for a lot of people, not everybody. And this is where I think healthcare conversations could be had. For here in Canada, medicine is, socialized, which we can probably get on a different conversation with. Doesn't necessarily equate to great. Doesn't necessarily equate to great healthcare. But I think that it would, if potentially we have the opportunity to doing so many positive things with, higher taxes and et cetera, to say, hey, listen, this is part of your wellness check. Let's keep abreast of, our citizens throughout their life. And perhaps maybe that would reduce, overhead with medical, but that's a whole different conversation.
Well, while I have your attention, I want to also, then I'm going to punt this one back around. I want to ask you, because you said you're very passionate about this. So when should a woman start hormones? Should it be at the onset of symptoms? Is there a certain magical way that you just say, hey, I'm just going to start HRT? How does someone know, based upon your passion for this? I want you to convey that to them, because that is still a big thing that so many people argue back and forth on, and there's still a lot of confusion on that.
For me, I don't think that there can be an across the board answer, because I would hope that any person or individual is treated as such. For example, what if a female, and this is why starting earlier is better than later, because I'll use myself for an example, just to have something applicable. If there was no way in my life that I thought at 21 years old that I would have an ovary removed, prior to hitting 40. I never thought that I would be in menopause before 40. And so what if across the board we said, oh, females should not have hormones until they cross 50. We shouldn't even consider that. Well, that's not opening up the dialogue to me as an individual and, you know, my history. So I think that goes back to that dialogue of looking at a female over the course of her cycle, because there's so many different variations with regard to our health. You know, somebody that has amenorrhea at 20, should hormone therapy be the first intervention? Well, I'm going to be honest. The first intervention for any female, regardless of her age, should not be hormone therapy. We should be talking about nutrition. We should be talking about her lifestyle. We should be talking, you know, about sleep. That should be the first conversation. Now, that being said, there's only so many strawberries you're going to be able to eat at a certain point. And I think someone posted this recently. Actually, I know who it was, Wise and Well, but intermittent fasting is not going to solve a dry vagina. You know, when you're 50 years old, I'm sorry, that's just not going to be the saving grace. That's not going to help with bone remodeling. And so that conversation with a female in her 30s is going to change for a female in her 40s, 50s versus somebody who has something like adrenal hypoplasia, like PCOS. That's going to be totally different conversations with regard to that female, how old she is and what's happening in her body. Like, that's just kind of my thought process.
Sonia, chime in. I'm gonna wrap out with you, Sarah, before I ask you guys a little follow up in the same category that I think would be helpful to go down as well.
So the question is when to start, right?
Yeah, when should women start HRT? At the onset of symptoms, lab work?
It's hard because we all three of us have had very vast different experiences. And I love that about this situation, because Meredith and I have been on I was on full HRT. I'm off all of it now. Meredith's on HRT, and we've all had different, and Sarah's had her own hormonal journey and experiences that have it's really cool to bring it all together. I think that there's a little bit of cliche sometimes and shame around when people do need HRT. And I also, in the same time, feel like we are kind of given HRT without getting to the root cause sometimes. I really like the root cause approach. Now, that is not to say you can't use HRT while working on lifestyle habits on let's just say premenopausal, postmenopausal, or like not in peri, right? So premenopausal. In those younger years, like, let's just say we are having irregularities with cycle. Maybe we have some PCOS, or maybe we have amenorrhea. Like, could you use progesterone? Like, absolutely. Is it the first thing that you should go to? No, but can it be useful? Absolutely. So there's tools, same thing with estradiol. Can it be useful? Yes. Testosterone, yes. But I think that many times we're not trying the first natural approach or the lifestyle-based approach or the trauma-based approach. We're so very quick to go reach for a medication. And I think that can cause issues specifically with HRT, because we become now dependent on HRT and we haven't quite worked on getting those other things in check. I do think that it's extremely beneficial. And I think that now more than ever, I think we can start understanding the benefits of specifically estradiol in postmenopausal and perimenopausal women, and how it can just be really helpful for their lifestyle. Like, we don't have to suffer through. We talked about this with Carrie Jones, I think it was last week. We don't have to suffer through these. You don't get a badge of honor. There's no like t-shirt that says, I survived without HRT. It's kind of like competing naturally. Like, no one really cares that you did it. It's just about how you feel in that journey. And so when it comes to when to actually start, it really, like Meredith said, is going to be so case dependent. But I think before anything, lifestyle, stress, trauma should be addressed. And if those things aren't making a difference, or maybe you need a little bit of medication, side by side with that, I think that's a good option too. So just not being the first response to things. We're still open-ended.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I totally agree. And like, the only thing I'll add is, like, for anybody listening, yes, it'd be wonderful if you do decide HRT is the route for you, that you start progesterone and maybe testosterone, and you get the dosages right and the form right, perfect on your first go around. But I would say working with people, that's very rarely the case. So it's not like you're necessarily going to go to an HRT clinic or go to your doctor and, oh, boom, like we figured it out, ready to rock. Like, no, like it's probably going to be like 6 months to a year at least of maybe figuring out the right dosage formulation for you, route of administration, et cetera. And if we don't have these lifestyle factors in place or haven't worked on some of the mental health kind of stuff, it's going to be more of a roller coaster than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Can I just say one more thing, Jeff?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's your all's podcast. I've just taken over like just for this moment.
I just wanted to say that when it comes to a female who is late stage perimenopause or a female who is postmenopausal, because menopause is one day, right? There absolutely, it is proven that with regard to risk factors to disease, you are going to be protected having your hormones being supported. But again, I'm also gonna, because we think, the three of us think broader, and we know that nothing is simple as one statement, because then what do you say if I say that you have to do this, or you're going to have these horrible life diseases? What do you say to that female that comes to you and is like, hey, I currently am dealing with cancer, right? Like, what are you telling her? You're telling her that life is over, she has to suffer, but in actuality, there is supporting things that with the right provider, that maybe HRT presently for her at this time is not appropriate, or maybe a different mode is actually appropriate for her to help give her quality of life and help offer her some sort of protection, because again, that's important. And this is why I think all of us, like, it's a big gray zone, but I think we all can agree that it comes down to one person and what they need in that moment. And I am absolutely a supporter and advocate of HRT for females because of all the protective benefits that we know that it offers in the right context. That's not just running out to any HRT clinic and saying that you're on HRT and then, Bob's your uncle. Like, that's not how it works. Having a skilled provider and somebody like, the four of us on this podcast right now, to make sure that you are, looking after like the trauma stuff, the lifestyle stuff, your nutrition, because let me tell you, if you're getting on HRT for just like fat loss and body composition, and you don't have, a solid digestive health, you don't have, like, Sonia said, lifestyle factors in place, you're in for a very rude awakening. And it could be honestly the most horrific experience, to which can turn you off completely, and then what's going to happen later on, right? Like, we don't want that.
I always try to explain to people too, especially in like amenorrhea case, or if you are perimenopausal and hormones have been lower for longer, when we do introduce those hormones back in, it's kind of like living in a library for a year and then all of a sudden rock music starts playing. Like, you're going to feel those feelings, receptors are communicating more, and that can take a couple months to adapt to. It's kind of like getting your period for the first time, or it's exactly like the change of life as we decline and you're like, why do I feel so off? Adding in hormones can also change, your neurotransmitters. It can change through your vitality. It can change so many things. And it is very sudden when it's HRT, versus like the onset of puberty is a little bit more like this. HRT is like, here it comes and it's all back again. So there is a transition period. And like, it's just important to really understand that and to work, like Meredith said, with providers that can help guide you through those times as well, because it's to be expected in some ways,
I think a lot of people, before they go on HRT, should do a lot of work on their mental and emotional states, just because if they don't get a better handle on those, they're probably going to find that HRT isn't the magical thing that they thought it would be.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the thing I want to talk to you about, which is actually a question. With all this being said, the HRT clinics are popping up like everywhere. You don't know which one to go to, this, that, the other thing. It's like almost like a war online between them all. But there's always a choice that people have, and they always get talked about. Do they take patches? Do they do injections? Do they do pellets? What are better and why? Because some of the clinics here in Nashville will do pellets, on like 20-something-year-olds. I'm like, oh God, that's gonna be horrible for you. But like in my woman who's like my mom, she's 69. That's something I can kind of understand her wanting the pellets for, right? Like at that point in her life, just not screw with it. But let's cut through the noise a little bit on that. What ways are superior, or does it just really matter on the case by case situation? Whoever wants to take it can take it.
That's your topic.
Mary, you want to go and I'll go after you?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I think best case scenario, if we want to talk about a best case scenario, I'm going to say a bioidentical is going to be the way you want to go. As far as modes, some people believe that the only bioidentical out there are like oral pills or injectables, and that's just not the case. So for example, patches, you absolutely can get bioidentical patches. You can get bioidentical troches, which is like a lozenge. You can bioidentical injections. And I think that going a bioidentical route, which basically means that it's more similar to your chemical molecular structure of your natural hormones, that's going to be the best mode to go. When we get into the more of synthetic hormones, that's where a lot of the fear from using hormones actually comes from, especially if we're starting to get into like the oral estrogens because of how that's metabolized through the liver and through the intestine. And we start getting into risk of clotting and things like that, when in actuality, if we use bioidentical hormones, we have the benefits of supporting clotting, whether that's more or less. When it comes to dosage and mode, I personally am not somebody that suggests the pellet ever. Also, like with going with things like patches, you have to think of like it does have an adhesive to it. And so not everybody's body does well with any type of adhesive. It is something that you're going to have to change twice a week. Using creams is also an option, and it's actually a really viable option that I also really like for a lot of females. But again, we also have to be thoughtful that using a cream, we have to look at the mode or where we're applying it as well, like for the host, because we really want to look at an area that has a lot of capillary structure. So looking at someone's glute, not the best option. And so looking at forearm is probably going to be better. But then again, depending on that human, how they're going to be utilizing a cream is going to be very different. So many creams are going to be like a 2-a-day application. Is that's something that's possible for that female, is something to be thoughtful of. And then again, where she's applying it, as far as like, does she have small children, animals? Does that work well as far as like what her lifestyle is she sweating a lot? Like, so that's really important. I do like using, again, the creams or something injectable, because you can get a little bit more specific with dosage, which you cannot do with a pellet nor a patch. So we can go very, 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 very small, or we can get, a little bit more robust if need be. We can also vary that dosage throughout the month. So doing something that's called rhythmic dosing, which is simulating a more natural hormone fluctuation that a female would have during her fertile years, which again, when we're getting that stimulation of the high highs and lower lows of certain hormones, that's what's triggering those changes for the body in a positive way with regard to tumor suppressor genes, things like that. But again, that's probably like a best case scenario if we have someone who's constantly changing their dosage all the time, to have that rhythmicing, and we are then going to be having an actual menstrual cycle, which is maybe not something that your mom would want to have, like at 69 years old. But that's kind of my thought process with regards to, I like bioidentical. I do prefer, for the most part, creams or injectable if possible. But again, not everybody likes injections. And there are, again, depending on the female, there's females that I have on my roster that do better with a patch than they do with injectable. And so this is where, like Sonia was saying and Sarah was saying earlier, you have to work with your provider. And it's not like, oh, I tried this for 1 week, I'm not going to do it anymore. This is a bottom process that you're going to have, depending on your age and depending on the rationale, for a long term. So that's just kind of my thought processes.
Well said, bottom process. I like it, because it really is, like you got to kind of just go through that. So Sonia, let's go to you. And then Sarah, if you have anything you want to kind of like pencil in, I might tidy up there on the end my thoughts, but love to hear what you got to say, Sonia.
I agree with Meredith. I think she just nailed it. Obviously, she's like our queen of HRT for like a good reason. She did a really good job of explaining the differences. I just want to piggyback a little bit. I always almost let people know if they have small children not to do the cream. And I know that as a coach, we shouldn't always be like, I don't think this is a good option, but it is a really hard option to go with when you have young children. And it's like I've used it before, and it's like you just think like of a hug, they jump on you, like you can't always be like, you can't touch me. I don't love the transfer process. So I feel like when I have a client and I'm talking to them, do you have kids is the first question. And then if I've seen a Dutch test, because I'd never recommend the pellet. I wouldn't say that I would say I'm anti-pellet. I don't like to say I'm anti something. I just don't like that it's in there and you can't adjust it. I don't love that it's the first route that a lot of people go with. And I don't like how high the dosage is. I don't think women need to be over 100 milligrams of testosterone if they're not competing and they're not using it for that benefit. I see a lot more weight loss resistance the higher testosterone goes. And I feel like a lot of the women who are administered the pellet are in their mid 40s, early 50s, late 50s, and they already have a higher than 16% body fat percentage. And that's when we start to see the higher the body fat, the more you add in testosterone. We talk about receptors with insulin. We talk about different processes. The body starts to become weight loss resistant. And then I think I see TRT clinics go, great, so let's hit you with semi-glutide now. It's like, no, that's fucking not, dude. But like, it's so crazy how much it's just not thought about. I think people think it's the easier option from not injecting, and they don't want to inject. And obviously creams aren't great if you have kids, but I'm telling you, the prick of a needle for testosterone specifically is so small, once to twice a week. And it really is the most accurate way to optimize testosterone levels with the least risk of overdosing, because you can honestly test it every week if you wanted to and adjust it. Every 3 weeks, you could adjust it again and you can really get that dosage down. The pellet, you do not have that option, and it swings from very high to very low, and there's nothing in between you can do to support that either. So it's in there and you got to ride the waves. I'm not for it. And progesterone specifically, I used to be an oral like Prometrium progesterone fan, but recently I've been working a lot more with the trophies, the kind of like a sublingual in the cheek. And I have noticed that we can do a lot more with a lot less, and clients feel a lot better where they maybe weren't having the same such a big impact as their Prometrium or oral progesterone, tablets that they'd swallow. So those are my thoughts on it.
I think that was a good point you brought up about the testosterone level. I'll see like women in their 40s be on TRT from a clinic, and they'll be like high test levels. I'm like, hey, are you trying to compete? They're like, no. And I'm like, well, I think we need to kind of lower this down so we can start going that way. Sarah, before I get to you, I want to actually piggyback into this on something I've seen, and I wanted to kind of get your all's takes as we're on the topic of the creams and all stuff. I have seen Anavar being utilized from clinics for women in replace of the testosterone. And I see Sonia already mouthing shit to me about it, but I wanted to get your all's take on that. Is that ever an applicable thing? Because let's be honest, for competition, girls rely heavily on Anavar, depending upon their division. So it does do some things. So I want to kind of get your all's take on that while we're on the topic of it, and then hit Sarah to wrap this one up before we move on to something else.
Who wants to go?
No, I want you to go first. You're nodding. You look like you want to say some venom.
Okay.
So
there's good research in using low dose oxygenolone, which is Anavar, in women with very high sex hormone binding globulin. It can lower it and it can help with people who are dealing with that. So your clients that are like 130, 140, which can happen, and boron necessarily isn't doing the trick. Low dose, maybe 6.25 milligrams, which is like a quarter of a trophy, something like that, can be beneficial for those clients and use for that. So I think that it has its use and can be a really great product. But at the same time, I also see providers giving it out to just everybody. And again, we're not looking at, how testosterone processes in the body is, we talk about 5-alpha, 5-beta, which we don't dive into a lot on this podcast, but it has two routes it can go. One is going to be more inflammation immune system, and one is going to be more androgenic symptoms like hair loss, voice deepening, Hirschism, things like that. And I think without really having the proper information, without having a Dutch, I don't think it's ethical to administer oxadrenaline. I just don't, because we don't know how it's going to process in that body as far as how a person is going to react. And it can be a lot more potent. It has a little bit of a different effect than necessarily just testosterone. They're different substances. They don't convert into each other. Honestly, oxadrenaline can lower testosterone levels in some cases, but I just think that it has a really good clinical use. And I think that there's really good research on it, but I think it's kind of given out like candy. And I think that I have a real issue with that,
Good point. What about you, Mare?
So I will be honest, I have yet to see a case personally where that would be a suggestion or even on the table. I align absolutely with what she said. One more, I'm going to add another concern. So I'm going to say, I agree. And then I also have another concern is with regard to the adrenal health and potentially lowering of cortisol.
Yes.
And that's something that we're seeing, I think we all could agree on this podcast is, adrenal health is a thing that a lot of women just need to give a nice hug to. And that would be a concern of mine with regard to lowering that cortisol even further. But again, at such a low dose, I don't really know, because I'm only ever familiar with it not lowered. Well, I would say typical dosages for females. So it would just be another concern I'd have with lowering cortisol even further. And again, I think that Dutch test would be, again, a great thing, but I have not personally seen a client that I would recommend that for yet. Because we all know we're going to, there's that one.
Yeah,
that's because you said that.
We're
going to be flooded with these clients.
No.
The one that I had was put on 5 milligrams. I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. That's a reasonable dose. And it was because she was having a hard time getting her testosterone regulate out on the dosages. So that's why, and she actually had a Dutch test, which showed she was split even. So I was like, well, I'll see an issue, run it for a little bit, find what you want to find. Everyone's kind of different. You don't know. But I agree with you at the dosing. I've seen the literature on that too, especially for the visceral fat and what it does for dudes. It's really good. If they can handle the HDL pummeling that it gives. But you women don't have that HDL issue.
Yeah.
Sarah, anything you want to say to wrap this one before I get to your question? Any little bow tie you want to put on it? I feel like we had a great dive on a hormone.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. I think it kind of goes to show the importance of some baseline testing too.
Yeah.
Again, Dutch test might be applicable, maybe even a GI map to make sure, we're absorbing things well, check out, liver, all the things.
I agree. All right, let's get to your question. This one's interesting. 3 larger meals, would it be more beneficial for constipation where the person had previous under eating, or should they go with the 5 to 6 small meals? So previous issue was they were under eating, constipation, and they want to know is 3 meals better than doing smaller 5 to 6? Sarah, we'll start with you, and then Meredith, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit after that.
Sure. So I would say, first off, if you're under eating, that can be a reason for constipation in of itself, just because you have less food coming in. Usually thyroid hormone lowers with that, which can cause some constipation as well. I usually tell people to space meals every 3 to 4 hours for constipation. So for a female, typically I like 4 to 5 meals, meals or a mini meal a day, as far as spacing your food. But you do want to space your meals roughly 3 to 4 hours, because you do see a lot of people cramming meals together every hour and a half with that more frequent meal schedule, or they're grazing all day, or they're not eating all day and then eating all of their calories at night. And that definitely does disrupt the migrating motor complex, MMC, migrating motor complex, which is basically the process that kind of just sweeps food through your digestive system. So if you're not properly spacing your meals, you're not really allowing that process to really fully work. So yeah, I don't know if I have to choose between 3 or 5 and 6. Like, can I say 4? But if you have like diarrhea, that's where I normally suggest smaller, more frequent meals. But for constipation, I think the spacing is a little bit better.
Anything you want to do with fiber there? Is there like numbers you're telling people to chase, hit, pay attention to, or just hydrate and hope for the best?
Water, yeah, water and hope for the best is usually what I tell my clients. No, no. I think fiber sweet spot. Everyone kind of has their own fiber sweet spot. If you're eating 60 grams of fiber right now, we might want to lower that, right? If you're eating 20 grams, we might want to bump it up just a little bit. For most women, I'm going to say my clients like high 20s to mid to high 30s as far as fiber is like roughly where most people do well at, but temporarily lowering it might be, you know, especially if you're a volume eater, might be helpful.
Good point with that. I will say this: when I was doing keto and I was just doing 2 shakes and like 1 meal a day when I was fasting, it was by far the best I felt, and my poop game was by far the best it had ever been. Just a
Weird.
little TMI there, ladies.
I've heard that about like
My-
the carnivore like meat poops or something.
Yeah, no, I felt great when I was on it all around. Like it cleaned up a lot of my digestion stuff I was having in prep. I actually wrote a little post about it. But Mayor, let's get to you. What do you
I
say?
have a question for you though.
Oh, shoot, let's get down it. Toss one to me, baby. Yeah, put me in.
No, it was actually just on what you just said, like about being on keto and having like noticing better bowel movements.
Right.
When you are on keto or when you coach keto, do you, because we all know there's different schools on this, do you have a fiber goal for your clients, or do you not count vegetables and it doesn't matter? And as long as they're, you know, nailing fat and, you know, hitting protein, fuck fiber. Who have we seen fiber? We don't know. We don't care.
I try to make sure they at least get 20 grams of fiber. Metamucil hacks, husk, things like that I'll go with. I have seen the issue of if people will try to eat too many vegetables, they really have a harder time getting into ketosis, and they tend to pick up gut issues because what will happen is they just want to fill themselves up with greens. And I've seen this in like 3 people. And then it's almost like they're just bloated. They get digestive messes.
It's that
and stuff like
volume
that.
again. I find it's
Yeah.
that volume, like just,
Yep.
and even trying to get like, because I'm similar when I do like keto suggestions. I always have like, hey, I really want us to try to hit to, you know, this 20 grams of fiber per day. But sometimes I feel like there always has to be like that nuance because, and again, looking at what they're eating, because a lot of times, I mean, if you are filling your day with like, you know, lettuce, broccoli, like that can be a lot of volume. Like most people think keto, it's like less volume, but if you're actually caring about, you know, veggies and, you know, color and things like that, it can be pretty voluminous depending.
Yeah. A lot of people, I found their notion of keto is they go to Chipotle and just think it's all the meat and cheese. And sour cream.
That or keto marshmallows.
Yeah, they think it's like that. And it's really a whole different mechanism. It's a whole different thing. But I just thought that was interesting for me personally, because I noticed when I was in keto, my bowels completely changed and it was for the better.
Have you done carnivore?
I have not, but I haven't had any autoimmune system issues. I've had one client who actually wanted to try it and he feels great after 6 weeks. God love him. I don't know about eating a pig's heart or some shit like he's doing. I mean, he's probably eating something wild knowing.
I wonder if you end up saving money, because I always thought it would be more expensive to go carnivore, but I guess long term you would save money.
I think it depends upon what you want to buy, because like liver, some of that stuff, like look at Austin. I bet Austin's like stouts from eating ostrich and all the other weird stuff he does. You know, love you, Austin, but let's face it, some of that stuff's weird.
He loves a good unique meat selection.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure that it gets pricey if you were to go down that carnivore route, because there's only probably so much I could eat, and it's like nose to tail, and there's other stuff to it. But they swears up and down it really helped him, like his eczema and stuff like that's improved a lot. So
I just wonder how I'm turning this into a project. I'm wondering how your bowel movements would do being on keto or being on carnivore.
Yeah, now I want to try it. When I'm done competing one day and I don't care about how I look anymore, and the narcissist in me slowly dies, then I'll be ready to do a carnivore diet. But until then, the narcissist reigns supreme, so I care. Let me ask this question, Mayor. I'm going to throw you this one because you didn't get one. So, and I know you probably been sitting here enthralled and didn't think of a question to ask, but does Zevia soda really have 0 calories? Does any of that shit really have 0 calories out there?
I'm gonna say no.
Oh.
I don't know what CVS soda is though.
It's
It doesn't have
Zevia.
malodextrin.
I could have butchered
Zevia.
it because my mom did not want to send me to Hooks on Phonics in class as a kid. So my phonics is all fucked up. So I apologize.
I thought you were like CVS, the pharmacy soda. I was like,
Oh,
is this a new
oh,
thing?
come
I don't
on.
know.
CVS. Like, would you think I am poor? Just kidding. All those who shop at CVS, it's a great store. But anyway.
Zevia is the soda, and I'm obsessed with it. You've never had Zevia, Mare?
No,
I never have
I
either.
thought he said CVS, but Zevia, I know it's Zevia.
Named with Stevia. Which
Zevia.
I say it's that way. People say
Zevia.
Stevia, but yeah.
Zevia.
So 0 calories. Like
It's hard because I'll tell you the ingredients. They're
it's
just
like erythritol, right?
no,
Oh,
just stevia. If it had erythritol, obviously, or malodextrin, it'd be a different issue. It's literally just stevia and water and then natural flavoring.
I'm pretty sure it's got 0 to 1 calorie.
Five calories, yeah.
I would imagine let's just say it's so close that it's got to be close enough to rate it as 0. For most people that don't know, like a nutritional label can be like, was it 10 or 20%
It's
inaccurate?
20%. 20% inaccurate either way.
Yeah, so up or down. It's basically like a rounding game. It's a 20% range. But I would say with those ingredients, I'm gonna say it's probably at the bottom end of that range, like pretty damn. Now,
Funny, you drank them. Like, did you notice they made you gain or stalled your fat loss?
No, so obviously I check my blood sugar. And I was in keto and doing all the things, and it never had an impact on anything. But if I did something like a Diet Coke, it did bump my blood sugars up, which is just interesting. Maybe it's my body's reaction or what, but Zevia never had an effect on me.
Plain coffee? Did that affect your blood sugar?
Plain coffee affects my blood sugar. Caffeine, I'm just so sensitive to it because I don't do it. I just
don't pay attention.
How was I ever a meth addict? Sometimes I think,
See, Coke Zero bothers my blood sugar. I think it's from the chemicals, where coffee does not affect my blood sugar at all. Like, I actually drink coffee during my fasted cardio, and I do that for my prep. And people are like, oh, your cortisol response. I'm like, well, I guess Huberman's fucking wrong when it comes to me, because I'm just a little outlier over here as I sip on my 24 ounces of black coffee to start my day.
And tolerance is always going to be, I don't do well even with decaf coffee. It makes my, it's something has changed. Yeah. But tolerance is always not taken into consideration with these things. It's like, obviously your tolerance it's fine for you, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the conversation I also, going back to that keto, that I always have to have. I'm like, hey, listen, like, some of these things could actually be pulling you out of ketosis or preventing you from just that, that stress response. But even like stevia, which there's like the brand stevia. No.
Yeah, they have the brands.
And then there's Truvia, which a lot of people think is stevia, but you actually have to read, it's not stevia. It's like erythritol. And I think there's actually a caking agent in there too. So you have to look at those things. Yeah.
Put a lot of like malodextrin in them too, which are carbs. And so you do like 6 of them, and then you're like, okay, well that can honestly affect so many things. Even sometimes erythritol can honestly affect some of those things. We also have to take into consideration like food, not allergies, but just slight intolerances can also change blood sugar levels too. So if you're not able to get in ketosis, I always think about change up your food, see if there's something that changes with that,
Speaking on that, I want to go ahead.
I would say that Tampa ice cream, the lights. I had that one time. The next morning I took my blood sugar. It was like 120. And I'm like a 70 to 80s girl. And I was like, what the fuck?
It didn't affect my BGs. My postprandials were fine after it.
Okay.
82, I think. Yeah. Jeff, what were you going to say?
So speaking of ketosis and people getting into it, have you all seen where you can have them trying to get into it for 4 to 6 weeks? They don't get into ketosis. You pull them out for a couple of weeks and then put them back in, and suddenly it's like their body's in ketosis and they're ripping. I've seen that happen a few times. Now, Jason and I talked about this in our podcast last week. He hasn't, but I have seen that And I don't know if it's people weren't like eating as honestly as they thought they were the first time, and then saw it didn't do what it was supposed to do, and then like shit, and then they gave it an honest go the second time. But I've seen that a few times, so I'm curious.
That was me when I was doing OID and I was in keto and doing that. And I could not get into like deep ketosis. Once I did I did like a 4 or 5 day like vacation, it was almost like a big refeed. And I was just like, I'm going to eat kind of whatever, which was still low. I mean, you're used to eating so low. I came back and I was able to get into ketosis a lot better. So sometimes I wonder if there's like a stress response. Some people don't do well in keto. And if you're low and in keto, that can be kind of hard. And you're doing cardio and you're doing lifting. Stress can keep a person from going into that. And that could be a stressor.
100%.
I wonder, like, I think that also opens up that conversation of like, stressors were not like we've talked about, like, you know, mold toxicity and things like that, like autoimmune, like just with autoimmunity, right? And your body, like, unfortunately being resilient, but not in the right areas that we desire, where we're like, just give in and just, you know, release. And your body's like, fuck no, bitch. I'm going to just, you know, resist this as hard as I can. One thing like with keto, I don't know if y'all have done or always do, but something just to ask is that I have seen even for myself is when I did keto before, it was like no problem. But the last time I did keto, I also could not get in ketosis, but I also didn't monitor my ketones prior to. And that is something I was like, well, have you guys also seen that? Or because I have, where we weren't monitoring ketones prior to getting into ketosis. And so then there's that conversation of, well, is it that the person's not in ketosis, or they're just not really, numbers aren't showing deep into ketosis because they're actually utilizing the ketones? Have you all?
I have them start the ketones and the
Before.
blood sugar.
Now I do, yeah.
Before my doing it, because you'll see that it'll spike, and in the course of like 2 to 3 days, it could be like down back into like 0.3, 0.5, they say like what 0.2, I think is where kind of like, oh, you're kind of getting to ketosis, 0.3, you're in it, and you'll see it be around 0.3, 0.4, and people swear they feel better. And that's where you kind of have to go off the symptoms and stuff like that. But usually I know if people say like they don't feel any of that energy or mental clarity or anything feeling better, then I have to pull out and try again.
Yeah.
Not why I've been with it. That sounded really bad, but why are you laughing? It's not even funny.
Just readjust. It's fine. It's happened to us all. You know,
changing all the time. Don't worry about it.
Well, I think, ladies, that's our hour. Do you guys want to get one more? Or are we wrapping? Wrapping? All right.
We're wrapping, yeah.
Okay,
we're
cool.
Solid, yeah.
We're excited to drop this. It's probably Wednesday when you guys are listening to this. And so the next episode is we have Megan coming back on, and she's going to be talking. Megan from Vital Medical, previously Advanced Vitality. So she's going to be talking about, last time we talked a little bit more about healing peptides and beauty peptides, and we're going to be talking about the juicy, saucy stuff for weight loss that you guys wanted to do, but it's its own topic. So GLP-1s, things that can help support weight loss, body comp, dive into a little bit more of that stuff with her. So if you guys do have questions and you're listening to this episode, make sure to send them to us so we can make sure to get those over to Megan and prep her so she can answer them on our next episode of Unnamed and Untamed. And Jeff Unbreakable Black is his Instagram handle. If you don't follow him, which, come on, let's be real, who doesn't follow you by now after your first Unbreakable episode that you did with us? But just in case you don't, you know where to find him. And then is it Iron House Gym if clients want to work with you local, or is it?
Correct. It's Nashville, Tennessee. If you live there, I have the gym. And if you're looking to work with me, my link tree through Relentless Forever, which is the coaching brand.
And when's the ETA of, well, he actually already like pumped book number 2 starting. When's ETA of book number 1?
So ETA is, I found someone to publish the book. So I'm going to do 500 copies self-published, have them sent here, and then sign them, charge a fee and so forth. And that allows me to make more money because Amazon takes like 60% for a hard copy and 40% payback. You don't really make money if you can get speaking gigs. So fingers crossed, maybe that happens. But I'm just waiting on the cover. That's literally the only damn hang up. And after that, it's set to go.
That is awesome.
Hopefully
That
in
is
the next
awesome.
couple weeks. I'll probably surprise everybody with it and just drop it.
I'm
You never know.
excited. I'm excited.
I'm interested. I'm going to take the advice I got from Steven and from another well-known writer, which was don't read the comments. I was like, I get it. You know what I mean? Because I just witnessing stuff in the social media world in the past couple months, I've just been kind of like, woof, like,
Yeah.
all right, here we go. I can't wait to see what's said, baby. You know what I mean? And I'm one of those people, like, I just want to get on a plane with a baseball bat and settle my shit face to face. So I'm just not going to read the comments and pretend that everybody thinks I'm an amazing soul. And
The ones that matter do.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the stuff, it was really interesting. I went to that workshop last year. They spent like a good couple hours really prepping people on that. You're not going to really make money. You're going to have to really hustle and grind. Writing's just kind of more of a passion. You turn it into speaking. People are mean to you. People say awful things. People are going to be like, you should put a comma there. You should have used the word that. That was stupid to say. Like they really prepped you on getting hammered. And then Steven telling me how Steven Seagal treated him. Just kind of was like, well, okay. Yeah. Steven Seagal, one of my favorites from Hard to Kill and all those great movies in the late 80s, 90s. Yeah. Total D-bag to Steven Pressfield.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Weird. Never meet your heroes.
Yeah, I don't know. Steven was cool as cat. I met him. I was actually trying to get him to speak at the seminar we're putting on here in February. So
why don't you plug your seminar real quick?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a charity one for Vanderbilt Children's Hospital here in Nashville. They actually work with a lot of kids with my bone disease, osteogenesis imperfecta. They're a big research hospital. So we're going to try to raise $10,000 to benefit them. So the tickets will be $100. It is February 9th and 10th. It is a really diverse ticket. We have Jason, we have Lacey Dunn, John Gorman, Cameron Cheek, Ben Azita from the Keto Podcast, all that different stuff. So it'll be exciting. One and many other great people, Justin Mahaley. I'm forgetting other names off the top of my head, but it's gonna be 2 days and $100. So if you guys like to come, hit me up. Stuff will be dropping soon for that. I learned after all these other seminars, I don't say crap until about like 6 weeks out.
So, well, you heard it here first, you guys.
Yep. You guys will be able to get it. All right. Well, thanks, ladies, for having me on. It was fun. Hopefully, we can come back for more. And then when we go off, I need to talk to y'all real quick.
Yeah. Thanks.